Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of the Skin Wellness Pro Show, the official podcast of the Nutritional Aesthetics Alliance. I am Rachael Pontillo, president of the Nutritional Aesthetics Alliance, and I'm happy to be here with you today and also with my co-host, Tara Swagger, who's our education
Hello.
specialist. Hey, Tara.
Hi. Hi, good to be here.
So
Excited for the next chat.
definitely. So we have a topic today that I think many of you are going to be able to relate to. And it's not a topic that we initially were going to bring up today, but then Tara, you had a massage last night and that got me
Yes.
thinking. So why don't you
Yeah.
tell our listeners what happened?
So, while we're compiling all these different topics that we know are going to be great for all of our practitioners out there, this is one that I know everyone's dealing with. And I went and had my massage last night, and the conversation between me and my therapist, who I've had for years, and she's fabulous, comes down to burnout. I mean, it's funny because, I feel like there's so many of us in our businesses that we're entrepreneurs, we're working hard, we might be juggling families, we're wearing all the hats. I know we've chatted about the hats before
Yeah.
because we're all doing that. And as we're talking about it, she's been in business long enough to know better, to sort of create that time, carve it out. But sometimes it gets away from you. And so I think this topic is really great because, there's a couple of things I think that happen. Number one, I think we're excited, we love what we do, and we're in the position of pleasing people, right? Whether it's through our coaching businesses or whether it's through if you're working in the beauty industry and you're offering massage or you're offering treatments to help people, all of that is stuff that we are really passionate about delivering. So it sometimes can be hard to reel back. But I think there's no one who has been hidden from this issue of burnout. And, I think the older generations sort of have been able to sometimes carve it out, figure it out. I've ebbed and flowed through it. You mentioned right before we started that, right now, maybe you're not having that
so
space.
much.
Yeah. But I
Like
mean,
I
ultimately,
know what balance looks like on paper, but with what's going on in my life right now, like my personal life, it's just not happening right now.
well, isn't that the thing though, too, is that, you know, there's this idea that there's a balance. And I think that that's sort of not real, because I think that there's balance is more about a seesaw. It can go back and forth and back and forth. And I think the problem that most people have in these industries is that they keep, their magazines tell them find work-life balance, and, you've got to find balance. And I think that that's sort of not a real concept, except if you can put it on paper. But let's face it, that paper doesn't translate necessarily. And so I think there's also like this space where there's either you're not making any time, you're not doing it at all, it's not even in your radar. That's bad, because eventually, as you energetically move through working with clients, that will deplete you, and you won't have much left. So that is definitely a mistake. And then you have people who are, building businesses. And so the energy of that is not going to set itself up for necessarily creating all this space for downtime and relaxing. And there's a time for that. And then
There
there's
is
the
a time for
time.
that.
Yeah. And then there's a time where, you've built your business, you're creating this, you've got this good flow where you can step back. That's usually when it's the hardest, because you're in that flow and you have it all growing and you have it building, but it's sort of taking over a little bit. And I think that again, ebbs and flows, right? I mean, depending on where you're at. But I think that this conversation is really about, like, giving everybody that space and permission to say, it's okay to be like you are right now. It's okay in this portion of time to maybe not have that space that you're looking for. I think that happens to all of us. My son just started baseball again, and then, all our weekends will be baseball. And
Yep.
all the nights are practices and all of that. But that's a healthy, wonderful thing. So we shouldn't necessarily just stare down that busy season and say, oh my God, I'm not going to have any balance. The balance comes when there's space to create the balance, and then you do. So I just think sometimes we don't give ourselves permission, or it gets out of hand and then we can't even see that we're so, defunct from carving out the space that we need to replenish ourselves.
Yeah, and I think that, at least for me, it starts with too much multitasking. And I will say, like, right now, I'm coming off of a few, I would say, I was going to say a few weeks, but it's actually been a few months of absolutely burning the candle at both
Mm-hmm.
ends with, you know, frequent launches in both my businesses. And then in my personal life, I have both my daughters are dancers, so we've had competitions, we've had performances, they've had rehearsals till 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, 6 days a week. It's been ridiculous. And then at the same time, my older daughter is a senior, so we are finally winding down the college application and admissions process. We're down to 2 schools. We're going to visit one tomorrow, and the other one we've already visited enough, and we're just like, waiting to see what's going to happen with the financial aid, to see what's going to be the best choice both financially and what's going to be the best fit. And even the trip tomorrow, like, I had to reschedule calls, I had to reschedule classes, that I was going to teach, but I figured, this is a decision that's going to impact my daughter's life for long term, so it's kind of important. So we have to get up at like 5 in the morning to drive to be at this event that starts at 8 o'clock, so that she can attend classes with students and shadow students for the day, so she can really get a sense of what that's like. And of course, in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm missing an office hours call with my Facebook ads coach. I
Yeah.
had to reschedule this. I have to make sure that I scheduled this email to go out at this time. Like, being able to be present at that event while still thinking about the 10 things that I wish I could be doing at the same time, even though, do I have to do it all at that moment? No, but this is what we do. And then, how many times when we're focused on work do we think about, oh my God, if I wish I could be doing this with my family, or this with my spouse, or go on this vacation and not have to work so much. So I think the multitasking and just reminding ourselves to be present on whatever it is that we're supposed to be focusing on for that time, that's something that I've really been trying to work on, albeit not too successfully over the past few months. But that's something that's come into my consciousness as one thing that I can do to help me kind of avoid that burnout. Because for me, the burnout is definitely a mental and emotional thing. It's not about the physical amount of tasks. It's not about how many things do I have to check off my list, because usually when I'm lamenting about something that I'm putting off, when I actually sit down and do it, it takes me 15 minutes. Right? Isn't that how it always
Yeah,
goes, right?
yeah,
The amount of
totally.
time and energy you spend avoiding it or worrying about it, and then you do the thing and it's done. And it's like, oh, wow, how much energy did I just expend? So giving myself permission to just, like, tomorrow not think about work, focus on this school, is that right for my kid? And then the following day, I have classes to teach, I have clients, then, focus on the clients and not worry about the fact that I know the committee at the other school is making their decision about financial aid right now. And what are they thinking? Is it going to be enough? And, like, having that ability to separate compartments, if you will, and be present on the one thing and not feel like you have to feel guilty because you're not doing the other thing too.
Yeah, well, I think some of it too is I recently said this to somebody, that I personally at 43 just learned, or started to learn, about boundaries about 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
But this is kind of where, for the younger people, or the people that are kind of in the weeds and not really seeing how to do it. There has to be boundaries. And I think like for you, like you just said, compartmentalizing, but that's boundaries. It's like saying tomorrow I'm going to be with my child and that is going to be my focus. That's where my energy is going to lie. Nothing else needs to happen. So that's the boundary. Like, you create that boundary that you're not going to let all these other things in. I created boundaries around the schedule, and I watch lots of people in our industry, they might say, well, I work 4 days a week, but then so and so really needed to come in on Saturday, so I'm going to go in on my Saturday, or so and so is going to go in on Sunday. And so I think what starts to happen is, and if you're in the beginning of your business, let's say this, you've got the energy for it, right? So it's a very different space and time where you might be doing that because you're building something, you're trying to get your name out there. And I think we've all done that. That's not really what I'm talking about. I'm talking about this sense where you are allowing everybody else to pull you out of what your focus is, right? Because we talked about in the last podcast, finding your focus. And this is a little bit part of that too, because, the boundaries that you make are saying, these are my hours and this is what I can do. And if that doesn't fit in there, there's an emotional space that people have to find themselves in where they can accept that client may not be your client because they can't come during the hours that you work. And that's okay. So I think there's all this space where people don't give themselves permission. Like, you have to give yourself permission to enjoy your day tomorrow. You have to give yourself permission to say, it's okay that I don't leave whatever I have to do on a Saturday to accommodate a client. Now, it doesn't mean you can't, but I think most of the time people really fall victim when they open up those spaces. Once you create those boundaries, if you stay within them, that can be one of the biggest helpful tips on cultivating a space where you don't have burnout, because where you're working and it's not impeding on the rest of the life that you want to have outside of that.
Right.
So I think cultivating those really good hours is important, whatever that looks like. And it can, obviously that's going to look different to everybody. And I think that's a good start. So my therapist was saying, like, she works like 9 days in a row and then has a couple days. And I'm like, what the heck? And so some of those times are Sunday. So I was saying that to her. I'm like, listen, you've been doing this a long time. Your clients on a Sunday, if they can't accommodate another day, they're going to understand. And at the end of the day, if the clients can't understand that and they're kind of pushy or aggressive about it, then that might not be the energetic person that you want on your schedule, right?
True.
Because, and it's okay to not fit anymore too. Like, this is the ebb and flow of your career and your life and your business. And I think people get stuck holding on to services they no longer want to do, clients they really don't want to see because they get exhausted. And this is where the burnout all comes, right? Because we're not creating the boundaries, determining what our time really is, making sure that you have space to rejuvenate. So sometimes, I know for me, like, I just got back from Florida, and I had so many things leading up to that I was like drooling to get to Florida for that space, that re-energizing. But during that time frame, I was probably overworking myself, but it was okay because I knew I was gonna. There's a little light at the end of the tunnel, right? So I like to get all the things done. So when I go, I can really unwind. Then I come back into the new phase when I come back. And so these are the things that I think people are missing, is that it's okay to be over busy or overbooked or maybe working too hard for a little while, but we have to have the boundaries of knowing, okay, when is there going to be the stopping point? When am I going to rejuvenate? When am I going to make sure that my life is carved out, whether it's on the weekends or it's a couple days during the week? So I think these are the things. And here I am getting a massage last night, right? Because that's another part of it. I make sure I get my massage every month. I mean, I'm on the rotating schedule. This is not a frivolous thing. This is about making sure that my body feels good, that I'm getting good blood flow, that I'm managing my tissue, and of course, rejuvenation. And I don't miss it. And so, sometimes it's that, right? Book something or keep it regular. but be okay with it getting crazy once in a while too. Like that's okay. That's part of it, you know?
Yeah, I think what you said about being really realistic with your time and understanding that if there is a time frame, whether it's a few weeks or maybe even over a month, that things are going to be busy, whether it's in the business or in personal life or both together, that you carve out enough time deliberately after that is over with to recuperate from that. So, like for me, an example is when in the last fall, I created a new program called the Design Your Star Product Workshop. I was working with a new business coach, and we did this whole new launch strategy and funnel. And it was like new technology, new everything for me. And I don't think I have worked that many hours for that period of time. I want to say it was from like August to November that I was just like, go, go, go every single day. And then I remember having conversations with family members like, don't ask me for anything until after Thanksgiving. Don't ask me for anything until December. After that, my brain is free. And Tara, I think I probably said that to you when we were planning
Yes.
this podcast. We started talking
Yes.
about this podcast in the fall. And I'm like, I can't even think. I'm like, yes, but not now. Wait until my
Right.
brain is available. Um, because I knew that come December and even early January, I would have less on my plate that was forward facing, that I had to
Mhm.
actively put in those hours. And then I was able to just focus more on being in receiving mode and then delivering
Mhm.
to my clients and my students what I, had promised during that launch. So launching is definitely a tiring experience between the momentum that you have to gather and that high energy that you have to produce during whatever the launch event is, but then the behind the scenes is it's an exorbitant amount of tasks and
Yes, it
technologies
is.
and people involved helping you, which is great. But I realized that for every launch, I usually need a good solid week after that,
Yes.
that I don't have to use my brain.
Yes. Yeah. So that's the boundaries. That's the
Yep.
plan, right? Like, so when you were going through that, I was opening a second business when I
Yes.
opened the store, and I was working 7 days a week. And same thing, like in my mind, I was like, I know I'm going to get a break, right? So like, as long as you can plan that. And I also think that, you know, when we talked last about finding your focus, and I mentioned about the business plan, I think this is another thing that people throw this idea out. They're not doing this every year. And you had mentioned also you could do it every quarter, and for
Sure.
some that might work better too. And I think that that's a really that comes back into this too, this topic, because if you look at your year and you know where your busiest times are, then you know you can mentally prepare for the fact that you don't want to take on any other mental challenges, or you don't want to take on redesigning a website your busiest time of the year, holiday season, or whatever it
Right.
is, right? So that's another space where when you find your focus and you get your business plan working, these are the things you're going to put in there. I know for me, I always say like January to May, that's like my best time to like do all kinds of stuff that's like
Mhm.
admin and like things like that. It's not because I'm not busy at work, it's because I'm not in those flows, the marketing flows of the holiday or the back to school, or it's not my summer, because when summer comes, I work all summer long, but I don't want to be inundated on my extra time with things on my brain, because I want to spend it with my kids.
Right.
So, you know, this is the boundaries. They come back in and we kind of make these determinations about what exactly it can look like. And I know for me, I've always been really good about scheduling the massage, and I book that out because I'm a hyper schedule person. I know you are too.
Yeah.
And so I keep a very good schedule, and I put my massage in there. I also do some other things. You know, I was talking to you earlier about your circadian rhythm. And so the other thing is besides picking out, like, for the year, these time frames, or putting in the schedule a month later your massage, it's what are you doing on the daily basis too to create the recharge? Because the small pieces of your daily activity that can help you recharge and rebalance can be just as valuable as those long-term investments. And I recommend them as a coach all the time to my clients, because it's usually the most palatable place to start. If you're finding yourself overworked, you can take those big picture items and say, I know I need to work on those. Most of the time, like you said, can be daunting, and then you're like, then you don't handle them at all.
Right.
But
You
I
just
think
lament about them.
yeah. So those ones can probably sound a little more challenging, but, like, what does your morning look like? So, I do this a lot with clients, because if you can create a space in the morning where you're creating a ritual every day that is nourishing to you, that every day actually adds up. It's like saving $1 a day, right? Like, that doesn't sound like much, but let's face it, in 6 months, you're going to have a little bit of pocket cash. And if you do that little bit every day for your rejuvenation, it does the same thing. Whether it's, for me, I very much organized in how I keep my circadian rhythm working and primed. And this comes with morning sunlight for me. And it's every day, and it's a walk every day. And while people will say, I don't have time, you do have to carve the time. But once you carve that small bit of time, whatever it looks like. So my husband and I will walk for an hour. We go out at sunrise. You don't have to do an hour. Do 10 minutes. Go outside for 10 minutes, right? So it can be that small. But when you're focused on those little small daily habits too, what ends up happening is you start to get all of these health benefits that start to align. And then no matter how busy you are, your health is intact enough so that you can sustain those more prolonged, stressful time frames. And that all leads back down to sleep. If your circadian rhythm is intact and you organize that well, then when you're sleeping at night, your rejuvenating sleep is so much better for you. And when that happens, you have more energy for all of that taxing stuff that's probably overbearing, right? And so it comes in two forms. It comes in that long-term planning, and then it comes in that daily activity, which is, I think, just as important. Sometimes people will say, well, I don't have time, or maybe the extra funds to go do the massage or a treatment like that. It's free to take a walk.
Yeah.
The sunrise is free. And so balancing your circadian rhythm is actually a free thing that you can do, and utilizing nature. And I think it's an undervalued, but the science of this is really, really strong. And I know we're working on the masterclass so that we can start to integrate this for practitioners, because you want to work with, so you're a practitioner and you're burnt out, but your clients are coming in burnt out too, right? Because
they're counting on you to help them feel less burnt out.
Yeah. And so now they're not necessarily going for a massage, because maybe they're coming to see you. And I know I have clients that I'm their person that they come to, and they're getting all of that package when they come to see me. So I appreciate that as being someone that's part of their routine in keeping themselves sane. But you're in that unique position as a coach, to be able to help your clients find other pathways to that success. And when they find
that oasis for that.
Yeah. And right. And then when they find some of that success in some of the practices that they can do, you'll be amazed at how your clients are like, oh my God, I started doing that and it's so easy and I'm feeling so good. And this all kind of turns into better health, better skin, anti-aging, all the things that people want without all of the cost, or the really big time investments. And so hopefully as we get closer to that masterclass, some of you that might be either feeling this burnout for yourself, you can join the masterclass so you can understand how to balance that circadian rhythm and then teach it to your clients, which is the most exciting part. But we've got to keep talking about how to stay balanced and not burn out in our
Absolutely.
industries.
And I just want to drop a little plug that to find out when that masterclass is going to be kept abreast of all of the events that we have coming up that are either free events or paid master classes or our main practitioner training program, sign up for our newsletter. And how you can do that is you go on our website at skinwellnesspro.com, and we have a seasonal integrative guide to healthy skin. Right now, it's our sensational spring skin guide. And you just sign up for that download. That gives you some great seasonal information. And I brought up seasonal for a reason, because we're going to bring seasonality into our discussion about burnout in a moment. But then once you get that, you're signed up, that also puts you on our email list. And we will send you things like new podcast episodes, new blog posts, and news about any classes that we have coming up, or any classes or events that I have that I think that you might be interested in. So definitely get on our list. Also follow us on social media at Nutritional Aesthetics. But Tara, before we started recording today, I was talking about, how like it's warm out today here in the Philadelphia area. I was just out for a friend with coffee. I carved out a little self-care,
Yay.
which
Yes.
was socialization at this lovely little French cafe in Philadelphia. And it was like 78 degrees when I got out of
Nice.
there. And I was like, oh my God, the sun. It felt so good, because this is the first day that it's been actually warm since, October, probably September or October. And I was just, it just instantly puts you in a better mood, just feeling that sunlight. And I was walking from my car to the cafe, and people were mowing their lawns and breathing in the fresh cut grass. I just
Yes.
walked in there with a smile on my face.
Mhm.
Whereas yesterday it was cold and gloomy and gray, and I had like kind of a down day yesterday. I was not
Yeah. Yeah.
in the greatest place. And it is
Mhm.
amazing how just a change of weather and just that sunlight and that fresh air and that warmth can shift your emotional state. And I I realized that for me, burnout seems to be so much worse. And I find it so much harder to dig myself out of it when it is the wintertime, or when it is
Yes.
gray, dank, damp, chilly, cold, unpleasant weather. And
Well,
while,
this is
yeah,
the most underestimated issue that we have if you're in the northern latitude, right? Because,
definitely. And you were saying
seasonal.
you're in Connecticut. It's not warm where you are
No,
today.
it's not. The great thing is, though, the sun is out, and that can make all the difference, even if it's cold. But if you're in the northern latitude, the winter can be long. And the
Yeah.
truth is that this actually has a very dark biological effect on the body. And while some people, you'll notice, and you'll notice this in your clients, you're going to have clients that are going to be affected by it easily and quicker than other people, but mostly everybody will be affected by it to some degree. And some people just aren't in tune enough with themselves to really notice it. But certainly it is going on, and there's a reason for that. Your electrons and protons are not in the same excitation as they are when the sunlight is out. And one of the things that happens, I think, is depending on what your haplotype is, which is a longer conversation, but everybody's nationality can play a part in a role in how, whether or not you need to be in the sun more than other people. And so this is like the genetic predisposition that most people are completely unaware of.
You find is
If you
H15A, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly.
So you don't have to even really dig too deep to know, but like essentially darker skin typed people belong in the South
Yeah.
because their absorption of light is very different than the lighter that you are. And so this is why there's higher rates of other kinds of chronic illnesses in darker skin types in the northern latitude. Their genetics are meant to be in the sunlight. And all of our genetics really is because for thousands of years we lived with no lighting. We had no indoor lighting. Like we lived in nature. And so
We lived
our
when the sun was up and when the sun was
right.
down,
So
and there was
our
no
DNA.
artificial scheduling keeping us awake longer than we should be.
Yep. So our DNA is coded already for a process by which the sun comes up and the sun goes down, the sun comes up and the sun goes down. And we really distorted that in our modern day. And so this is another part of that. Like, you don't think as clearly during the winter time, the longer it goes on, and the more, your biology is suppressed by the lack of sunlight, and the exposure of the indoor light. And so, yeah, you start to sort of like, I find that March, where I am, because I'm in Connecticut, so I'm more north from you, and clearly not as warm as you today.
No, that's a big difference. We're
Yeah.
almost
And
in the
so,
80s and you're in the 60s. That's
yeah.
crazy.
So I find that my clients start to get real scratchy at the end of February,
Oh yeah.
beginning of March. This is when everyone starts to have like the real impairment of the way that they feel, the way that they're able to handle stuff. Their stress level is going up. And most of it just really has to do with the fact that we're just in these different latitudes. So that definitely plays a role. And I think that seasonal affective disorder is probably the most underrated issue that we have in these northern hemispheres. And people aren't paying attention to it. A lot of times you'll find that I often recommend my clients getting their vitamin D levels checked, because when they
for
are
sure.
if they see a naturopath, or hopefully even their doctor, vitamin D levels in our region are so incredibly low. But the vitamin D is a hormone, and it affects our personalities. It's not just for our immune system, and it plays a really large role in a lot of regulatory processes in the body. And a lot of that also has to do with how our neurological functioning is happening. So I think, as that lack goes on, right, and your vitamin D levels are dropping, and we're getting to March, if people aren't aware of that and they're not paying attention to that, then that's making it worse. And so, all of these things are going to contribute to these high stress scenarios during the times where maybe your schedule is out of whack, or you are getting a little more burnout. So there's things you can do with your health, and then there's also things you can physically do with your schedule.
Right.
And they all encompass a little bit of something in the long-term planning and in the short-term planning of your everyday. And so this is where organizing your quantum health and your circadian rhythms really make the biggest difference in every single way, because you can tackle that in a small portion of your day every single day, and keeping that aligned. When I started studying quantum health and balancing my circadian rhythm, it's been incredible. I mean, I've worked through these timeframes where I was working 7 days a week for a few months when I was opening the new store, and I did not feel burnt out. And
That's remarkable.
I should have, right?
And it was during the fall and winter,
It was
late
right
fall,
before,
winter, when it was already getting cold and dark by you.
Yep. And also going into holiday season is always a crazy time. And I remember saying it over and over again, I'm doing fine. I didn't want to work 7 days a week at that point, but it wasn't creating that sense of debilitation. It wasn't bringing me down. It wasn't creating burnout for me. Obviously, that's not a long-term situation. You don't want to be doing that if you can help it. But I believe that my attention to these health benefits and these practices truly kept my biology functioning well enough to manage through the time. So, as coaches, we really want to learn these aspects of how we can help our clients every day find a way to stay healthy enough with small changes incrementally, so that they have their mind intact to create those long-term, goals for the year, for their business or for their household. And, it's twofold, but I mean, I guess this topic's really big altogether, but everybody's
I'm
burning
sure we're
out.
going to bring it up again in the future.
Yeah.
I know we have a guest coming on in a couple of weeks to discuss something along these lines, but I just think that this time of year is such a great time to discuss this,
It
because
is.
we're just in the midst of this transition from cold into warmth. And
Well, and the other missing piece is daylight saving.
oh my God.
I mean,
I felt like it
that's
affected
another
me so much more this year. I'm like,
Yeah.
why?
So that's another thing, right? We forget. we forget that these things are playing a part because they're all part of this culture that we're in.
Right.
And then we kind of get lost in the mix and we're like, why are we so messed up or why? And so daylight savings, like that is for me, I mentally prepare for that every year because I find that to be jet lag for me. I'm used to getting up for sunrise. When the hour changes, that changes everything. It changes when the sun comes up. And it takes me a couple of weeks to recalibrate. And I think it does for most people, but they don't realize it. They're just like kind of losing their minds, like, oh my God. And like, I don't know what,
It's because they don't have a choice. If they're like on a
Yes.
schedule that they can't control, they don't have a choice. Like they got to go into work, or if it's, a child or a teenager, they have to go into school at the same time every day.
Right.
And that schedule doesn't care that that's not
It
natural.
doesn't.
I've seen so many articles over the past couple of years about how people, like different countries, are looking at like a work day to start at 10 a.m. instead of 8 a.m. or a school day to start at 10 a.m. instead of 8 a.m. because it's so much better for most people, but it's just not happening.
Well, and
Still
even
like the 9 to 5 or the 8 to 5.
even
That's not normal for most people.
the data for health disorders, heart attacks, the data that shows that what happens at the increase in all of those things during the time frame following the daylight savings is really incredible. It's incredible and this goes back to my circadian rhythm background in quantum health, is that rise and fall of the sun plays such a strong role in your day-to-day health, that when daylight savings happens and then we have these major increase in like heart attacks and these issues, that's kind of really interesting to me that it happens quickly and it's being targeted to say that this is connected to daylight savings changing an hour. You wouldn't think that.
It's
so
crazy.
people aren't noticing it, but it's there. And so I think that then goes into increasing your burnout, increasing your I think most people are unaware of all these things that are playing a part. But the more you become aware and you can create that pathway to keeping yourself together, then you can sort of sustain those shifts and changes a little bit better.
Yeah. So, other than your morning routine, what are some non-negotiables for you to avoid burnout?
Well, it's never negotiable for me when it comes to taking care of myself, like I said, with the massage. I also do other things that are really important to me. A couple of years ago, I reduced the social media and I reduced the television to very, very little about 3.5 years ago. And I would say that is a big non-negotiable for me because when you stream negative things into your daily life, it adds a layer that you don't realize is again happening. And I think that's going on for so many people. They're inundated, they're on their social media, they've got the TV on every single day with the news and all that media. And we don't have the TV on in my house during the week. If the kids want to, sometimes we homeschool, so the kids will, if they want to watch a little TV, it's documentaries. So like they'll find a documentary but it's pretty rare nowadays. I don't put the news on in my house. It's negative. And I think people underestimate the frequency of what's going on when they have all these things on, even if it's in the background. The frequency of those messages are still playing a part in your cellular being. And I think that that's something that people aren't realizing, but that's not negotiable for me because I have things that are of value that I want my energy to be available for. And so I keep those out. I stay on top of my personal self-care. I have that scheduled out on a regular basis. So I'm never like, oh geez, I'm really tired, I got to go get a massage. No, it's in there every month. So those are non-negotiables. Sunlight in the morning is a non-negotiable because my training and understanding in this topic is it's incredible. It's incredible what is happening in your brain when you have that exposure to that morning light. And so that is also a non-negotiable. And I do a lot of other things. I'm really big on my morning ritual. I'm big on meditation. I do a little bit of meditation almost every single day. And when you take the TV and the social media out, it gives you a little bit more time for some of those things too,
It
you know?
does.
And there's so many packages that it's going to look different for different people. When I talk
Sure.
to clients, I always, I'm always asking my clients like what they're into and what they like. And I always try to get them to go out for some morning sunlight in the morning. The people that have adopted that practice they feel like it's changed their lives, and it will. My pet owners are always the easiest sell on that because their pets have to go out, right? So I'm like, oh, you have a dog? I'm like, so why don't you make the time you go out at sunrise? And they have an easier time implementing that. But and I think it's good if you can go out for an hour, like we go out for a walk for an hour. But if you're even getting out for 5 or 10 minutes to see that sun, breathe in that fresh air wherever you are. If you're in the Northern Light, it's cold. It's cold. I go out and it's cold, but you breathe it in, and there's such a vitality that you're gaining from the ions in the air when you're in nature.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much science for this. And I think that it's so undervalued in our society. And I think when people start to reintroduce some of these daily practices and their stress level goes down, they just can't believe how simple that was, you know?
Yeah.
And then it helps you sustain, you know, those crazy periods of time when your kids are, you know, doing all these sports and all these things, or when your business is crazy. And it's those basic things that really help you sustain comfortability to get through, you know?
For sure. Yeah, I think, it's important that we find one thing at the minimum that is our self-care thing every day. Like for me, I love my nighttime skin routine and like my shower and all of that. And I feel like I can't go to bed. I haven't put the day away until I've done my nighttime routine. And it doesn't take very long. It's not very elaborate. I mean, I'm not one of these people who uses like 7 skincare products. I use literally 3, except for on days that I'm doing a mask or something like that. But I just, when I'm in the shower, I have this visualization that I do while I'm in the shower, and it helps me to just like wash the day away. And then I do my skincare and I put my frownies on and I have my sleep mask because, my husband insists on having like the phone in the room, and even that tiny bit of light from the phone distracts me. So I have my sleep mask on, and that's it. Like it sounds silly, but there
It's
if I
not.
don't do that, then I don't feel right. Like
Yeah.
my mind is racing. I keep repeating conversations that I had during the day, or like thinking how I might have done something differently. Like the brain just won't shut off. But when I do that routine, it really helps me just put the day away. And then when I wake up, I don't wake up still thinking of stuff that I hadn't finished processing the day before. So that's one thing that I do. And then, another thing that I wanted to share that I do to help with establishing those boundaries, and I know we touched on this a little earlier with scheduling and with planning and with, knowing your hours, is that I think that when you have your own business and it's not a physical practice that has specific hours, like open from this time to this time, if you work from home only, it's very easy for the entire day and night and weekend to be work hours.
Available. Yeah.
And we have to actually carve out what our daily work hours are. And that can
Mhm.
look different from day to day. So there might be days that you have an obligation during the day that is non-negotiable. Like I used to have this morning dance fitness class that I used to attend that I would schedule around because I got so much
Mhm.
from going to that class.
Yep.
Um, and then on other days, you might have more time in the evening because maybe your kids are occupied in the evening. So
Mhm.
it doesn't have to look the same every day, but I do think it's really helpful to plot out on like a weekly planner, whether it's a Google Calendar or a paper planner or calendar if you're still a pen and paper person, or I shouldn't say if you're still a pen and paper person, plenty of people prefer pen and paper to
Yep.
screen.
Yep.
But just like on a Sunday afternoon, just look at the next week. Start by putting like, okay, these are the non-negotiables, either for my work, for my family, or for myself. Every day you X out those non-negotiables and nothing gets scheduled. Like if your Google Calendar is linked to your online scheduling system, mark those as unavailable so that
Mhm.
nobody can, book that space at the last minute. And then, once you're closed for the day, that's it. You put the work away. You're done. You don't think about it. And then the second thing, other than just knowing what your daily work hours are for that week, is deliberately scheduling in like flex time or wild card time. Because who has had a perfect week where everything goes exactly as you planned? Doesn't usually happen, right? There's
Right.
always something that changes. Maybe there's, one day you get backed up with, a client who came in late and things were backed up, or maybe you, had a doctor's appointment come up, or just something where it had to cut into something else. And then you freak out and you're like, oh crap, now I'm not going to get that done this week. Well, if you have scheduled flex time, I usually recommend to my students and clients like 1 or 2 hours a week that you X out so nobody can book that time. And that is your overflow time. So if you didn't get to something on Monday or Tuesday, you will plan to do it during that hour on Wednesday. And then if you don't finish stuff, the rest of the day on Wednesday and Thursday, then you maybe have some flex time on Friday. And I always say that if there is nothing that needs to go into the flex time because the week did go well, then you get to take that as an extra hour of downtime or
Yeah,
self-care
totally.
time. But
Mhm.
the rule is that you don't fill flex time with scheduled work. It's supposed to be either overflow or self-care. And for me,
Well,
that has
that's
really
great
helped a lot.
advice. Yeah, that's great advice.
Yeah.
I totally we do that with our kids because we homeschool, and so
Yep.
every week, and we do the paper and pen schedule. We have I have a
I think
pad
it's
that we
great.
rip off. Yep, and we do our schedules every week, and we do the same thing. We always keep our overflow. We try to accomplish all of the work Monday through Wednesday. I mean Thursday, and then whatever doesn't get finished, we have in the Friday morning. So
Yeah.
we do the same thing, and it's great advice because I think it's easy to overbook, right? I mean,
Oh my
like
gosh. And
I
we're
my
so
book
used to
is
saying
always
yes.
full. Yeah, my
Yes,
book
I
is
can squeeze
always
you in.
yeah, my book is always full, but I do always have those pockets where I can reserve them for if something does come up or
Yeah.
something has to move. I'll be like, all right, well then I have this time over here type of thing. So, it's helpful to schedule. And I think that's another thing that some people are not doing either, because they're like, oh, I don't know if they're writing little notes or what, but I think that a lot of people are not utilizing an actual schedule every week. And I think it's causing them a lot of disarray with their personal life. Like they might have their schedule for their clients, but then everything else isn't sort of organized enough. And I always say, whatever you want to do on the regular, book it out.
Mhm.
Book it out, have it on the schedule. When you see it a month away and something that you need to do comes up and you have to book it there, then you just move it. You
Right.
make the call and you move that appointment. But if you don't have it there and it's not in your mind's eye, then what happens is you forget all about it. And 6 months go by and you haven't done the yoga class, or you haven't done the massage, or you haven't carved out a date night, or whatever it might look like in terms of the downtime that you need. Because if it's not on the schedule, it's not going to happen. It's like
Right.
it's like goals. If you want to achieve goals, you write them down. That's kind of a thing. So I think
Yeah,
with the
I think
schedule.
that what you just said, when I learned that, I think the first time I heard it specifically like this was from Marie Forleo years ago when she said something like, if it isn't scheduled, it isn't real. And like, how true is that? Because we
It's
we
true.
have so many things in our minds. How many times you're like, oh, I'm going to remember that. I'm not going to
No,
write it down.
no
And then
schedule.
you
Got to
can't even
schedule it.
remember what you said you would remember. Right.
Right.
It's like,
Yeah.
when I'm talking to my skincare formulation students and I'm telling them, anytime you're just messing around in the kitchen, mixing ingredients, write everything down,
Write it
because so
down.
many times you will come up with this brilliant formula that you think you'll remember, and then you don't. And then you find
No,
that
of
you can't
course not.
duplicate it.
There's way too many things going on in
So
the
many
world.
things.
Our minds, I mean, we're not, our ancestors were not inundated with all of this stuff. This is
No.
why our ancestors spent a lot of time in ritual, in community,
Yes.
in taking care of the members of their community very differently than the way we do. It's because they didn't have to have a schedule, right? Like they
Right.
lived a different life. Where this modern society is so hyper, and if you're a person that doesn't subscribe to all that and you're leading a much simpler life, then that is amazing, and
Yeah. Good for
I
you.
applaud, I applaud that,
It's
because
amazing.
yeah, I think that's a wonderful thing, and I think um I'd like to think of myself as someone who craves that, and I think I do to a certain extent, but I'm also very type A. I like to get my hands into stuff. I like to work projects. So there's a lot of fuel in that for me. And so for some people, they're not overbooked and they're not doing all that. But I think for the most people that are sort of in the middle, and you're living a modern life, it's just the way that it is. It's not something that you're going to really control a lot. So having that schedule is going to keep that balance enough so that you're not burning out, and that you're still tracking along with the things that are needed in your home, or needed for you, or needed for your business. And certainly scheduling is going to be a great thing. And like scheduling your time off, scheduling the ritual in the morning, you
Yeah.
block it off. Sunrise comes up at 6:30, so you have 6:30 to 7, you're taking a short walk, right? If you put it on the schedule, it's like you said, it can happen, right? If you don't put it on the schedule, then it's not really going to
It's going to
happen.
get caught up in the, kerfuffle in your
Yeah,
brain
and
of everything that is
and
already stewing in there.
and some of that stuff doesn't seem like scheduling stuff, right? Like it doesn't seem like you necessarily need to schedule that you're going to go see the sunrise. But the truth is that when you create a plan and you want it to actual execute, you write all the pieces down. What do you want to be in this world? What do you want to be in your life? What do you want your future to look like? Write it down.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, write it down. And like, that's the power of the frequency, that you actually think it, then you say it, and then you write it, and that applies to everything,
And I
whatever
think
it is that you
assigning
need.
it a value, that's your reward for a job well done. Like, I think my accountant actually does this really well. Obviously, like right now, accountants and
Oh
bookkeepers, they're
yeah,
all nearing the
totally.
end of tax season.
Yes,
It's all
totally.
crazy. And at the end of tax season, my accountant sends an email to all her clients. She's like, I'm going to be deeply unavailable for the next 2 weeks. So
Yeah,
if you need
yeah.
anything,
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, so, we just got back from Florida and we don't have something else booked. But I said to my husband, I'm like, we've got about 24 hours till we get something on the schedule and something booked, because it's fuel, I can say, all right, for
you
this
know
many
it's there,
weeks.
it's
Yeah,
coming.
for this many weeks, I'm going to kind of drive a little bit hard to get these things accomplished. And then I'm going to have my reward. And it doesn't have to be a vacation. Like, if it's a day off and it's a day that you're going to drive to the beach, or you're going to go to the mountains, or you're going to carve out this like hike you've been wanting to do, or whatever it is, all of those things refuel you enough that you can continue to have that busy life. But again, you got to put it on the schedule,
Right.
and that makes such a difference in actually accomplishing that goal.
And for me, especially, and I'm sure I'm not alone, when it's the cold, dark months, I feel like you have to schedule those little reward stopping points even more frequently,
So true.
so that you can even look like, oh my God, this next week, I just got to get through day by day. And then I get to go to the theater, or I get to go do this, or I get to go do that. And then when it's warm out, it's not that I don't still schedule fun things as rewards for my hard work, but I feel like I don't have to do so as much,
Right.
because just being able to go outside and soak in the warmth is sometimes enough reward for buckling down and focusing for, a few solid hours every work day.
Yeah. If you're in the northern latitude, I mean, everybody is so different during the summertime, the spring and summer. It's unbelievable. And I know for a lot of people will say New Englanders are harsh. And I'm like, I think so. Like I was just in Florida. People are so nice in Florida, like your cashiers and your grocery store attendants, like everyone. And my husband just keeps saying, he's like, because they're in the sunshine all the time. Like
Yeah.
they have sunshine. And I'm like, I know, I know. And so then you come up here and like people are really scratching around
Everybody's
March time.
cranky.
Yes. And people get cranky because they're not feeling that excitation, that fulfillment. They're not feeling that balance. They're not feeling that comfort. They're feeling the darkness. They're feeling that low mood, that low energy. And then that frequency imparts itself on everybody else, right? Like
Yes.
in the room. So, it just kind of goes on and on. But, if you are in the Northern Hemisphere and you're able to create a pathway to balance yourself a little bit better, your frequency will impart itself on your family and the people around you. And maybe, as you start to like dive into some of these things with quantum health and arranging your circadian rhythm a little bit better, and your frequency starts to shift, you'll sustain those winters a little bit better, because I know I do. I mean, it doesn't mean I couldn't wait to get to Florida, because I couldn't. I was like so excited to get into the sunlight, but I definitely think that patterning in my biology has made it a lot different. And I know this for sure with my clients that have created that pathway too. So
Yeah. Well, I, for one, am very excited about your next masterclass about this, because just listening to you now, I'm like, yeah, I don't do that. And maybe it would help me if I did.
yeah,
And,
well, the thing
I
is,
mean, it's never going to be perfect all the time, but
no,
I think
I
that there
think
are so many things that people could be doing that they just don't think of.
it's true. And so when I explain this and teach people about this topic, I'm attaching the science so that you can understand what is actually biologically happening and why it's a thing. It's not just something that, oh, well, I just feel good in the sun. Well, you feel good in the sun because there's a chemical component to what's biologically shifting in your brain, and that makes a big difference. But and the way that I'll be teaching this masterclass isn't so much about how you impart this to your clients. It's a little bit of both, but most of it is just teaching exactly the basics of what you want to know. Because as a practitioner or a wellness coach, you want to learn it and incorporate it for yourself. And when that starts to happen, you'll start to see how that it benefits you in such a deep way. And then you're going to want to teach it to your clients, because a lot of people are struggling that are coming in as your clients. They're struggling. They may or may not be on a lot of different medications. They may or may not have their diet aligned. Some of that might be really tough for them to do. And these are the kinds of things that you can help them do that cost no money, but also have a great impact on their overall health. So it'll be a great class. So I'm getting excited about sharing it with everybody.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, hopefully, what we shared today about burnout and some of how we each deal with that, we each deal with things, very differently, even though we have a lot of values that we share. But hopefully, those of you who are watching and listening are able to find one little tidbit that you're able to implement that hopefully can help you either avoid burnout in the first place or snap out of it if you're already there. So we would love to hear what you think about this topic. If you have any strategies of your own that have worked for you to avoid burnout or to prevent it from happening in the first place, please tell us in the comments on the blog at skinwellnesspro.com or on our YouTube channel. And while you're there, of course, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you're listening on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, please subscribe to the podcast while you're there and let people that it exists. We are fairly new and we're still spreading the word. So tell everyone who is interested in nutritional aesthetics or skin health, skin wellness, health coaching, that there is a new podcast in town called the Skin Wellness Pro Show, and we've got some great tips for you. So Thanks for being here, Tara, and thanks to everyone who is watching and listening. And again, we really would love to hear from you. So let us know what you're thinking about these topics. And if there's any topics that you would love for us to dive into, we would love to do that. So share your thoughts. All
Awesome.
right. We'll be back with a new episode sometime soon. Thanks again,
Okay, bye
Tara.
everybody.
Bye.